here we are with episode 6, maybe.
5.
5. We still need a nap. We're on page 22 of our Bernina Accessories workbook. And of course, as usual, you can go to episode 1 of the Bernina Accessories Workbook Mastery, and you find the link under description to download the workbook. Okay, so we're on page 22. We're gonna do hems. This is the hems and edge finishes chapter, for lack of a better term, in this workbook. We're gonna start with a blind hem.
Okay.
Which I figured out how to do on my mother-in-law's pants, because as usual, on her way to Florida, she dropped by and said, here are these pants. Can you hem these? You sew. Okay.
Stifles my creativity.
Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so this is actually a pretty slick foot, and it's a really slick
is.
technique. Makes a nice hem. So first thing Laurie is going to do is she is going to start with step number 1, and she is going to do an overcast. And she's using
I'm
foot
just
2A.
using the 2A. Or if you have a serger, which is what I prefer,
Right.
I'm going to serge that edge.
Well, it's more professional if you serge it. You could just use a 1-1 or a 1D
You could,
zigzag.
yeah.
But here we go. That's what we're doing here. Okay. When she's all done with that, she is going to use line stitch foot number 5. Line stitch foot number 5. Good job. Looks like this. So it does not come in a dual feed. There are a lot of Bernina feet that do not come in a dual feed, and this is one of them. And you'll notice that it's got this guide built in, and the foot will hop, or well, not hop, but move around this guide. And this is what the foot will use along with this little segment right, hope you can see it, right there. This little indentation right here is where it's going to form the little stitch that comes and takes a nip and then makes that blind stitch. So the little nip is just a little stitch every so often that a tiny little bit will show on the other side. Okay, there you go. So it is slightly counterintuitive figuring out how to fold your fabric so this works.
Right.
So if you were on a pair of pants, you would be folding it kind of oddly.
So this is your right side, let's say. And I've marked where that fold line is here is where the bottom of my hem is going to be. So I'm going to take that and I'm folding it in. And the edge is facing, like, kind of going up into the pants.
Up your leg.
So then you're going to take and you're going to fold that back like this. Excuse me.
Okay, and there is a picture of it in your workbook on page 22. It shows you how to fold it. And then you're going to use stitch number 9 in your stitch portfolio.
Right
That's
here.
for most Berninas.
And I have 5 on. Now, I like to set up a sample, and because that swing, I don't want a huge amount of thread showing,
Right.
but I want enough that it catches it. And certain fabrics make a difference on how much of
You're
a
working
swing.
on polyester double knit, which was the mother-in-law's
Oh.
pants. It was different.
Do you remember that stuff?
Yeah, I remember it.
What?
She's still wearing it.
What? They can buy it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Apparently.
so I'm going to do, it's going to take, the number 5 is going to take, I think it's 4 stitches, straight stitches. There, now we need to move over. Let's see here. Get going. Okay, so you're going to run this metal piece right along the folded edge.
This really is a slick foot, you guys. Really, it's nice.
So it's going to do,
And you remember, say I told you that little blade, that little divot there, and you saw that one stitch it took over. So that's
So
just a
watch here.
little bitty bite.
so
Right
that's
there.
right there. It's just took, and it's just taking, really, it looks like it's going to be enough. So So you kind of just watch it.
You want to make sure you don't miss, and that is an opportunity. If you miss, you'll
But if you keep that blade, this
Right up
blade
against
right
it.
up against the fold, you're pretty good. And of course, you're going to have more.
your whole leg's gonna be there, yeah.
Right, and you'll have more fabric even on this side.
This is good for curtains,
Uh-huh.
hems, skirts, pants.
Yep. It's really nice for curtains.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then you get,
And there is.
now look real close, how you can just see that tiny little bite. Every so often, there's that tiny little bite. So if this were pressed flat,
You'd never see
you
it.
wouldn't see it, yeah. And then you've got a nice hem.
And easy.
Mm-hmm. Very easy. Very professional looking. The
All
difference
right.
between homemade and seamstress stuff. All right. We're going to work now with our bias binding attachment. So we are working with foot number,
Well, 90. I'm working with foot number 94. You're working with
95.
95. This attachment is. This is a vintage one.
Yes.
This is what back in 2000.
Tell me
I
how
had-
long she had that.
Yep, I've had this. So it doesn't really like to fit like
Because
it
it's a
should.
9mm. Yeah. So yours is made for a 5.5mm machine.
So you're going to, and my foot is different. The foot actually the 95, we have a 95 here.
Here it is.
And they can see the difference. Now the 94 actually shows up on my screen.
So you've got the tongue is the same on both sides. This one is the 94. I don't believe the 94 is available anymore.
It's here.
It's here, but I don't believe it's available
think you
anymore.
can get it anymore. No.
Yeah. It looks like you broke yours.
Yeah, it
You
does.
broke that half off. So anyway, we're using this because this is what Laurie has, and we didn't want to, break open a whole nother one. It works the same way. So
Yep.
let's talk a little bit about this bias binding attachment. So if you think, there's two different sizes of them. There's the 87 and there's the 88. The difference between the 87 and the 88 is the maximum width binding that each can put on. So the 87 is primarily for, is that what you have, the 87?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, the narrow.
The 87 is primarily for like garments. So it's for putting like a bias tape around a neckline or an armhole, or what else would you put it on?
Bibs, maybe. Or,
yeah, bibs,
you know.
sure. So it's primarily for garments. The 88, you can do a little wider binding with the 88. It requires bias binding. So if you're getting this to use with quilts, our suggestion is that you try it out before you buy it. So you're going to have to cut bias binding, and of course bias binding uses a lot more fabric to cut than straight binding does, and a lot more work putting it together. So it's a little bit different thing. A lot of us don't want to have bias binding on our quilts unless they're curved.
Unless it's a curve.
Unless it's curved. The other thing is you have to be very, very precise with this technique. Very precise.
You have to cut like now this, I cut 2 threads over an inch. That's what is suggested. Again, this is not exactly, because it doesn't want to fit on here perfect. So we'll see where we are.
Okay, so you're back to for the quilts thing. You're going to want to think about that before you spend the amount of money that this costs for quilts. If you're going to get this for, like we were talking about, doing a nice bias edge on a top or armholes or bibs or, you know, garment making, that's a different story. But for quilts, this is not going to be something that's going to make your life lots easier. So this is not a quick and easy solution to the fact that you hate putting binding on. This is a lot of work to use this to bind an entire quilt with. So if you want to do a machine binding process on a quilt, what we would recommend you take a look at is the number 71 foot, the lap seam foot.
And we're going to show them that.
We're going to show you that because it's significantly easier. And you can use your normal size binding on that.
Now I've just kind of lined up, and I'm going to take a few stitches.
So she's got her bias binding in there, and it runs through the attachment. And you'll see that right here, so here your binding comes in one piece, and it runs through this, and then it comes through this thing where it double folds it. So it folds it on this side, and then it folds it on this side, and the attachment does that for you. So it's coming in one piece, and it folds it like those bias binding things that you buy to make bias binding with on your ironing board. This
And
is
I do
just
think
a
you
metal
can
one.
use them in here.
Oh, can you?
I think so.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
I do think so.
Well, that's cool. So anyway, so she's got that in there, and it's turning everything over. Okay, and then she's stitching.
And so what I'm doing is I'm finding out where, see where my needle, I think I need to come over
-1.
a couple.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that's kind of messy.
So she's
then.
trying to, that's not quite it either.
Mm-mm.
You might need to put it at a 0.
I might.
I think you're going to
That's
need to
gonna
put it at
have
a
to.
0.
So let's see if,
Now try.
nope, it's still not. Okay.
You're catching it, but it's really close. So folks, you can see how this would be a little challenging if you're doing an entire quilt with this.
I'm trying to get it, there we go, maybe now. So then what you're gonna do is once you get it started, you're going to put your fabric in. And still, yeah, it's just catching it. So let me go to
+1.
+1.
Better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it took a little finagling there to get that going. Now you can see how narrow that is.
And it's
And it is
and now
not a
it's-
double fold. You're using a single fold binding. So again, if you're talking about using this on a quilt, do you want a single fold binding
and
or
it's
do you want a
and
double?
now it's not catching. See how it's not catching it?
Yep, I do.
And it, I mean, it looked great right here, but it's awful. This one is awful. And a lot of it is because it's not fitting on this
Right.
machine like it should. If it was fitting on the machine like
You
it
might
should.
actually take that to, I mean, to get this, it looks like you'd have to be at maybe a +3.
Yeah. Well, I can, let's take it over there. Let me raise the foot up a little bit. See, it really wants to.
The other thing we're not talking about, there you go, you're catching her now. There you go.
So it's a matter of you just playing with this thing and
It's much better now. That's where you needed to be. So you're at a +4. So when you get to the corners, what you have to do is detach that binding attachment, swing it out, pull enough binding through to make your miter, then swing that attachment back in, feed your fabric back through it, and then start over. So the corners are a little sketchy. If you're going to use this to go around round things like necklines and armholes and bibs and stuff, it'd be fine. The mitered corners are a little touchy. We're not saying you can't do it. You absolutely can do it, but it is not the quick, easy fix to the fact that you don't like to put on binding.
yeah. No.
The number 71 foot is a much better alternative for that. So is that
And-
what we're going to show them next?
We
Okay.
are. And even the 71, it's a learning curve.
Yes.
It is a learning curve.
But
on
it's a
it.
lot easier.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and they have to, understanding that this is archaic. So, the newer one I'm sure works even better.
The newer one I had just as much
Yeah.
trouble with.
Did you?
I did. I mean, I could make it work, but it took a while to get the hang of it. So it's something that you're going to work your way into. You're not going to pick that up and just know how to do it the first 2-3 times around.
Yeah.
And if you don't do it regularly, then you're going to have that same issue where you go back to it and you're like, ugh, you got to refigure out how to use it. So that being said, we're going to show you what we think is the easiest way, which you don't have to use bias binding for. You can use just regular binding for this one. And this is the lap seam number 71 foot. If you remember in, I don't know if it was episode 2, I think maybe, of this, we showed you how to do a flat fell seam with that foot, the number 71 foot.
So now, I've cut it at, what I've learned how to do was cut it at 2.
2 inches,
Fold it over just like normal.
right?
But now you're going to sew it on the back.
On the back side, yep. So you do it backwards from how you normally do your binding. And you're not going to do the idiot thing like I did the last time I sewed a binding on, and I sewed the fold on the outside edge. And had to rip the whole thing off. Got to be kidding me.
All right, so I need my 71 foot.
You need your you need your number 1, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
So we're going to sew it onto the back side with the number 1 foot.
Actually, my 1/4 inch foot.
Or your 1/4 inch foot.
Yeah, because I can do the 1/4 inch.
That's an AD.
Did I thought I put it away.
We need naps.
We do.
Just share it. We don't get enough naps in here.
She doesn't let us nap. She took the beds away. You took
did.
them
We
away.
had beds. I took them away. Do you think I should put bunk beds back in here? You have naps.
All right, let's go to center. Wait, come on. There we go.
And then choose your foot.
And then we'll go to 97. All right, and I think now I should choose my 0 millimeter.
Yep. And set it for your 0 millimeter so that you don't accidentally go to a zigzag.
Right. We'll go here and I'll set that. All right. Are we there, boss?
We're there.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna go. This is shifting. So you would have this spray starched and
Yeah, basted. Yeah,
Basted.
all that stuff.
yeah.
Am I sitting on it? Okay, here we go. So we're sewing on our binding just normally, like you normally would, on the back side with a 1/4 inch seam. Do your little tack stitch to get you started.
Let me get that up. Because that's going to make a difference when
Yes,
we
it
put
will.
it together. So,
Yes, it will.
I had this all right when at the beginning.
You need to be lined up. You do need to be lined up. It makes a problem if you're not.
Okay. I'm going to just line up my edge.
I did a YouTube video on just this alone. So we have a putting on a binding with a number 171 foot.
Yeah, because we're probably not gonna go all the way around on
No,
this,
but I
so-
showed the corner and everything.
Right.
So if you want to know how to do the whole thing, we have a YouTube video on just this.
Now you're gonna stop 1/4 of an inch.
Right, and you do your pivot like you normally do. Your hold.
Now you know that with this 1/4 inch foot, this right here, when that lines up with the edge here, it's 1/4 inch.
Do your back stitch.
And then, yep. And then I can go like
And your fold. Your 45-degree fold. And your 90-degree fold. And press. And over at the corner.
Now, do you go all the way back to
I do.
here?
I do.
Because a lot of people come in that
Yeah.
1/4 inch.
No, I go all the way back.
And I'm just gonna do this
Yeah, you're good.
section here.
Okay, that's good. Okay, now, this is really very easy to do. You would press this.
I'm putting on my 71 foot. There's two different flat felt feet.
70
There's
and
one
71.
that's, and this one's the wider one, and that's
Right.
what you want, is the wider.
Right.
So let's just pretend that I have pressed this.
It is a wonder you have any fingernails left at all with all the pressing you do.
Well, and with Jacqueline DeYoung, too, I
you do a lot of
do.
pressing.
Now this is gonna be a little bit bigger because of that. That fabric is hanging over there. Because that comes over like this. See how much bigger that
You
seam
want
is?
to cut that off? Cut
Yeah.
that off?
Yeah, I think we need to. These are the scissors that killed me the last time.
Yes, you cut right up in your hand and bled all over the place.
I did.
You know what, I was probably on the phone with, dealing with a customer. Well, I just wanted to know, the customer called here, so apparently she did English, her name was Renee.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
Let's see how this one does. I think this one will be all right.
Okay. All right. So when you finished all the way around, you would leave about 4 inches of it left on either side so you could join them. And you would join them all the way around. So we would have this done all the way around if you were really
Right.
doing a quilt. Okay. So
You're gonna
you
take-
wrap your binding around, pin it to the front, or clip it in the front, attach your 71 foot, select your straight stitch, move the needle position so that the stitching is placed close to the folded edge of the binding.
So you're gonna put it up into here.
Yep. Okay, now at this point, you're not wrapping the binding around the foot yet. You're not wrapping around the foot yet. You're just getting it lined up and making sure that your needle is in the position you want it to be
Okay,
in.
so you were gonna just fold it.
Uh-huh. And then position your needle where you want it. And again, we would have this pressed well. It's not pressed. So just double check, make sure you're,
You can go over one more even.
okay, so you don't want it like right in the middle of your binding, you want it pretty close to the edge. Okay, once you've got that figured out, then you're gonna take a couple of stitches.
Why is that not moving? Because it's not gonna move, because I didn't change this.
You're on a 0 millimeter stitch plate.
Oh, so it's not gonna move. Okay, we need to change that. Alrighty. I've never sewn before. All right, we need to put on 71.
Yeah.
And that will make a big difference.
Close.
And we need to go
9
in
millimeter
here,
plate.
and I need to put 9mm,
There
and
you
that
go.
will make a big
All right.
difference.
Now, we're going to
So
get that
now I'm
settled
going
again.
and I'm lining the edge of the foot, this edge here, right here on the left side edge, the inside. I'm lining that up with that, the folded edge that so that I can see where I want my needle, and that looks pretty good.
Okay, once you get your needle where you want it, take a couple of stitches. Stop with the needle down. Okay, and then you're going to take that loose binding. You turned the hover off. Could have done it if you didn't have a hover turned. Okay, and wrap it over that toe.
And it's hitting the very edge of here.
Mm-hmm. And now you start stitching. And you just go slow. You're not going to go 100 miles an hour. So go nice and slow.
I'm gonna, I think one more.
Thank you. You have a good day.
And there you go. So when you get to the corner, you stitch as far as you can. Stop, needle in the fabric. Now, according to their directions, you would stitch right straight through there and pivot. I don't do it that way. So when I'm using this foot, I will actually stitch to a 1/4 inch away. So I'm pulling everything in. I stitch to a 1/4 inch away. Like you normally would on your binding. So right there. And then I take a back stitch to make sure that everything's good.
Cut it.
Cut. Then I turn the whole piece. I pull my miter up, and then start the process exactly like you started on the other. So just without rolling it over the tongue, you take a few stitches and then pull it over the tongue. And that way you can get a decent miter as opposed to just coming around a corner.
And again, you're not gonna see how this is a little bit thicker, so
it needs to be trimmed.
I'm having trouble getting that nice miter in there.
Yeah, because you got too much fabric there.
Yep.
Yeah, so your edges need to be nice and even, which this is not quilted fabric. We should have quilted fabric.
No, it's not quilted. It's
But
not.
you guys see what it would look like. Now, obviously, you would be using the same color thread. You wouldn't be using blue thread on purple binding. But it looks like that on that side, and it looks like this on this side.
So really, for kids quilts,
yeah. That's not coming off.
No,
They're not going to get that off. Yeah.
And you could, if you didn't want, you could go maybe, what, 2 1/4, do you think? Would that be?
I actually do use 2 1/4.
Do you? Okay.
I do.
Yeah, because then you wouldn't have this issue
So
here.
the YouTube tutorial I actually did the mitered corner, I did the whole deal, and I did it with 2 1/4 inch binding, and it came out real nice. And that is, that's a separate YouTube video, and it's with this number 71 lap seam foot, how to put binding on.
Yeah, because I've seen other ones where they say 2 inches, but to me, this is a little
2 1/4 is better.
Tight.
So the number 71 foot, which I don't have the package for, but the number 71 foot is significantly less expensive than the 95C plus the 88 binder attachment. I mean, you're talking hundreds of dollars less, and it's easier to master. It really is, and quicker to use. So anyway, just a thought. We're not saying you can't use the 95C and the 88. You absolutely can, and it'll make a beautiful binding if you're willing to take the time to get to learn to use it. And take the speed slow enough that it comes out nicely and you use bias binding. For the kind of quicker solution that you don't want to have to spend quite so much time doing, the number 71 is pretty quick and down and dirty easy.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I think I've done this once, and
oh, you could do that.
oh
Easy.
yeah, and it turned out nice. But you stop, you know, back here, miter it, sew it
Right.
without it being in this little ridge,
Right.
and that. But
And it
yeah,
comes out nice. I mean, I've done a couple of quilts with this.
like
so,
I've told people, there's a learning curve
Yeah.
to it.
yeah, with everything.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to come back on page 25 with episode whatever the heck the next one is. All right, we'll see you then.